Welcome back to Go and See. I hope your week of working through your timeline went well. I'm just going to start with recapping again the purpose and context of Go and See. As you can look back on, or maybe you remember from pages 14 through 16, there are three passages that are our guideposts for what we're doing in Go and See. The first one is in Mark, where we see that the disciples were walking with Jesus. They were exhausted and wanting some rest, and he says, "Come away with me to a quiet place." And when they get to that quiet place, however, they are asked to be a part of ministering to the crowd that followed them there. And Jesus asks them, when it's obvious that the people need something to eat and that there is no food around for them, he asks the disciples, "What do you have?" And they kind of likely blankly stare at them, and we can imagine that maybe their attitudes were a little bit grumpy because they were waiting to spend time with Jesus. And he says, "What do you have? Go and see." And so then they go and look for what little they have, and what little they find, God multiplies, or Jesus multiplies and feeds not just the multitude, but he also feeds the disciples. And so that is really the primary question that we are looking at in this study. What do you have to find refreshment and to feed the people around you? And then if you don't know, it's time to go and see. And so we're looking at different tools of how you do that. And one of the other passages that is highlighted on pages 14 and 15 was from Matthew 25, the parable of the talents. And as we talked about last week, those talents aren't just monetary, and they aren't just things. Those are your spiritual gifts. Those are your personal experiences. Those are your personality traits. Those are your natural passions and abilities. And God gifts each of us a different set of those, because he knows that we are designed for a good work in a place where he sets us. But sometimes maybe we don't look for them, or we don't see them. And we notice that the servant who did not invest his talents, he was dealt with very harshly when the master returned. And so what can we do to make sure that we are honoring the Lord's design in our life by looking at and examining who he's made us to be, the gifts that he's given us, the people that he's put in our lives, to be investing for his kingdom? And what does that look like for each of us? And then specifically last week, we looked at Joshua 4 and the call to remembrance, and the reminder that we are all forgetful, but if we can set up these pillars, if we can re-examine our stories and we can record them and write them down, they can be a refreshing testimony to us, and also they can then be the stories that we tell others that point to Jesus. And we talked about how tying themes and Bible verses to the moments where God was present to us in very clear ways. If we can tie Bible verses and Bible truths to those as we share those stories with others, then we aren't just sharing our story, we're sharing the gospel, and we're sharing the truth so that people can see God through us, and that it's really about him and really about pointing people towards heaven, because the treasures that we want to see in heaven are the people that we desire to also be in heaven with us. So how can our story, how can our testimony help us share who God is in such a way that the kingdom of heaven is also what is advanced in the process of us going on this journey? So I imagine that if you did the work of getting up each day, or for 5 days, writing out a little part of your story, that you are coming with just some fresh memories, and maybe you're just a little bit exhausted. And we're going to talk though more about those memories, about those stones that you're learning to set up and set in place so that you can begin to see God's faithfulness anew, that you can start talking about his promises, and then also eventually that you can see, like, oh, God was directing my steps in this so that now he's giving me a vision to help this person, or to be involved in this place, or to really affirm that I'm where I'm supposed to be, and these are the reasons why. So if you could turn to lesson 2, and lesson 2 is incorporating themes and plotline into your experiences. We are going to take one more step in this process towards really understanding how the moments of our lives, the stories of our lives, are important for us to examine because God put them there, but also to examine and begin to learn how to retell and to insert into like normal kind of everyday conversation, so that the story of who God is also a gift that we are giving to the people around us. It's the legacy. When the Israelites were told that the generations to come would see these stones and they would be set up as a monument for them to remember who God is, then are we called to that same work of setting up stones that the generations after us can say, I know who the Lord is. I know He is faithful. I know He believes His promises. So what does that look like if you're not called to actually build stones? Is that your story? And how can you set up your story in a way that shows that to the people that you encounter in your life, who are the next generation? They might be your kids and grandkids, or they might be anyone that you are mentoring, or they might be the people that you work with. So how can we look at our story in a little bit unique way that will help us to keep remembering our own story and keep sharing our own story? So if you want to look at page 26, we're going to look at page 26, and I'm actually going to give you some time to reflect or talk to the people in your group. And you'll notice on page 26 that says reflection and application. And it talks about remembering is hard work, and that going and seeing these things may have been very difficult for you. So I'm going to give you some time to talk to the people. Just talk to one or two people. And if you'd rather not talk to people, you'd rather write about it on page 27, you can do that. I want you to just choose one of those questions on the bottom half of page 26, and then take some time to talk to the person around you, or just to write about it, what your answers to that are. So there's 3 questions with some sub-questions. I want you to take about 6 to 7 minutes and process those questions either with someone sitting next to you, or write them out on page 27. And then when the time, when 7 minutes is up, you can come back and start the movie again.